there, listeners. Welcome to Shit That Goes On in Our Heads, the podcast where we normalize conversations around mental health.
That's right. I'm Dirty Skittles, and alongside my amazing co-host, G-Rex, we are here to share real stories and tips from our incredible guests.
Each episode, we deep dive into struggles and triumphs of mental health, offering practical advice and heartfelt support.
Because no one should feel alone in their journey. Join us as we break the stigma and build a community of understanding and compassion.
Tune in and let's start talking about the shit that goes on in our heads.
3, 2, 1. Welcome back to another episode of Shit That Goes On in Our Heads. I'm Dirty Skittles and my co-host, G-Rex. We are joined today by Dr. mOe. Welcome, Dr. mOe, to our podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us today.
Hey, I am excited to be here. I'm a big fan. You got a dope podcast, and I'm looking forward to a fun conversation. Let's do it.
Thank you.
I'm so excited about this. I've been waiting months for this conversation. And, there's so much time goes between the time we do a pre-interview and then when we really get to record. So I'm so excited for you. Just dive in. Tell us what's going on.
Wait, can I first fangirl for a second? So this morning I had your TED Talk on because I was let me get familiar because I didn't get to meet you in the pre-interview. So I'm I want to get familiar with who the essence of Dr. mOe is and the things that you shared online. So I was listening to it and my son started laughing because my son is 6 and there's something you said within the first couple of minutes of your TED Talk that I thought maybe only I thought that way, which was the fear of going to the dentist. What I mean is that when I became a mom, it was super important for me to not share my fears with him. And I don't like the dentist, but the fear that is more, that I'm this is going to affect him if he knows that I'm afraid of this thing, which is whales. So we go to the aquarium and I'm I got to just compose myself, keep it together because I don't want him to be afraid of whales because I'm afraid of whales.
Right.
But he was listening to it and he was giggling. He was why are people afraid of dentists? I'm I don't know. It's wild, isn't it? And I'm oh.
That's classic motherhood right there.
Yeah, so I just had a fangirl for a minute. So I'm oh, I get to see you now and talk to you and get to know who Dr. mOe is today. So Tell us your story. I hear you've got a little bit of a story on your growth. So where did it start for you?
Oh, geez, that's pretty broad for me considering I have 8 jobs. So I'll just kind of do an overview. I'm in healthcare. I'm a dentist. And the talk you listened to was what dentistry teaches us about curbing racism and African-American. And been African-American much longer than I've been a dentist. But at a point in my life, I realized that there were parallels between my experiences in both ways. And I am an intellectual tourist. I love learning, podcasts, TED Talks, books, all of that. I was a nerd, growing up. If they'd had Barnes and Noble when I was a kid, that would have been my playground because I just love the brick and mortar bookstores. Sadly, we're losing a lot of them. So, love reading. I'm a writer. I have 8 published books, fiction, nonfiction, professional development, and I host a podcast like you guys, Perpetual Motion with Dr. mOe Anderson, and I speak. I'm a speaker. So what those all have in common is that I like uplifting people, empowering, and you can educate people with a novel, just like you can with the great podcast guest. And that's my goal all the time, is to share tips and strategies. And honestly, a lot of it is for myself because, a podcast is like a masterclass in ideas, just ongoing. And as I research and ask questions, as I appear on podcasts like this, it makes me think. It makes me think about things. It helps me with new ideas and theories. And I'm in my element when I'm around people with curious minds. And it doesn't have to be something philosophical or deep, just like what you just shared about your son, that question and the things that they understand. I just love it. So I don't know if you want to ask me anything about any of those. I don't want to go on and on about, my stuff, but that's, in essence, those are the wheels that I operate in. So I say my wheels house instead of my wheel because I got a lot of irons in the fire. But I'm not happy just sitting around. I like doing stuff and interacting with people.
Yeah. I have a question. Growing up, were you always interested in learning and exploring topics?
You know what? Yes, I was. And my mom was teasing me the other day about the fact that I asked for a chemistry set every Christmas. I wanted another chemistry set, not Barbie, not a dollhouse, but I just love test tubes and things like that, or books. And that's pretty much what I'm doing now. I'm that same girl. But, I think my friends would say also that I got a wicked sense of humor and I'm a great dancer. I'm not going to demonstrate right now because of my knee. I was with some friends in my den last night trying to learn this Tamia line dance that everybody is doing now. I'm about 8 months late on it, but I like stuff like that, fishing and hanging out. So I like to think I'm left brain, right brain, essentially nerdy at the core, but not so much so that I can't do stuff like this and have a good time and hang out for happy hour after hour. So,
you know what? I've been so good though. Like since I had my breakdown, I really curbed my drinking, and I had stopped drinking at the end of January, and I just had a drink the other day, and I couldn't even finish it. I've been now into these lovely THC seltzers because they're amazing, and I only need one. It's 5 milligrams, and it just carries me through the day, and it really cuts my nerves because sometimes when I'm recording, believe it or not, I get a little nervous. So what this does is it just keeps me even. I still have my humor, but I'm not like super red in the neck, and I'm not being all jittery because I also think I have a little bit of adult onset ADHD. So, it happens when you turn 60, okay? Shit goes on in your head and you're not quite sure what to do with it.
I feel like that's happening to me now, but like every night, they got all kinds of stuff.
40, the new 60. Great.
So your parents fostered that, essentially, that mindset that you had as a young kid. They would get you the chemistry sets and let you explore the books. I love that.
My parents are educators, so if it hadn't been natural for me, I don't believe it would have been optional because they, that generation very much believed in the power of education and that being a way. And I grew up middle class. I wasn't necessarily trying to get a way out or escape anything, but they felt like, the 9 to 5 and some sort of paper with it was a way to have financial independence. So they were big on education, but they didn't really have to push me because I just naturally love learning.
Yeah. When you were younger, I'm just trying to think because I was not the chemistry set type of child, but when you were younger, did you already know you wanted to get into like the healthcare field, or what were your dreams as a child? Like, what did you want to be?
I didn't know. Felt like something with science as I got probably toward middle school or whatever. But I also looked into law and medicine and the professions that I knew about. Sadly, there were so many things that I didn't know about. I can't say I wouldn't do something different. Now, I mean, these kids are so lucky. Like my grandkids, they know about marine biology and forestry and being a developer and all of that. And those things were around when I was a kid, but I didn't see it. I didn't know anyone who did that. On National Geographic, it was just, women with no tops and men with bones in their nose. So I knew I didn't want to do that. I was like, I don't want to do that. That looks like they get sunburned. I don't know. So I'm going to want something indoors. And so of the things that I knew, I knew I wouldn't be a good teacher. I barely made it through with my 2 sons doing homework because I just see things one way. My parents could present things like good educators 1,000 different ways, depending on how you learn. But I'd be with my kids and I'm like, it's 8. I don't, whatever your teacher told you, however you get there, it's 8. So, I want to do it my way. I don't know what to tell you. I can't help you. So, boy, we used to have some battles. But she said because they weren't carrying the one anymore. It was like this whole new math, and I didn't want to do it. So, and then medicine, I never wanted to tell anyone that they were terminal or that they were going to have to die. And, people go into it for the health care, for helping people live. But my mind jumped to that part and never wanting to do that. And ironically, I still had to do something similar when I was in clinical practice because I had 2 patients I never forget that had, in the mouth, part of our exam that we're doing is looking for any signs of oral cancer or pathology. And there were 2 patients who definitely, and you don't tell them it's cancer, but you have to say enough to give them a sense of urgency. To go to the physician or the oral surgeon to look. And I just remember this one kept pressing me. Is it cancer? Do you think it's cancer? And it was cardinally cancer. But, finally I had to say there's a high probability. And it just broke my heart to even have to do that. But I didn't want him to not follow up because I didn't scare him enough, to be honest. So that's it. There were a limited number of careers I knew about, to answer your question. And of the ones that I knew about, dentistry interested me the most because I love art and I love science and I love communicating with people. And if you think about what dentists do, we spend more time with you guys than anybody, unless they're doing surgery, in which case you're unconscious. But just right there in the chair next to people, forming rapport and all of that. I really like that. And then the wonderful toys, lasers, and dentistry now is just, oh God, it's so much fun. It's like Batman if Batman was a dentist, this.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I kind of hate I'm in insurance now because that it was always a big thing about the toys for me.
Yeah, all of us listeners that are scared of dentists are like, just the toys. What?
Yeah, the toys. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Just put me out, please. Thank you.
And I did not say torture. I said toys. I think that's the 2 sides of that drill. But.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not to keep going back to the TED Talk, but can I ask, how did you land on the fear topic? Like, how were you able to put those 2 together? That fear is like passed down. Like, how did that come to realization for you?
Well, in the talk, I talk about my experience in dental school where a patient's mother was in the room and he was reflecting the fear and the racism that she had put into him. And while I recognized within that moment, I was in my early 20s and I can't, I'm in the South, I'm an African-American woman. Racism isn't anything new to me, but it wasn't until much later that I saw the parallels that the fear some people inherently have of me, even though they don't know me, and the fear that they may have of a dentist, even like there are a lot of 6-year-olds who've never been to the dentist, but they come in terrified because their parents have said, I'm going to take you to the dentist. They're going to punish you. In essence, they use us like that or tell them about how horrible it was and how much pain. So yes, it's passed down from generation to generation, like a toxic heirloom, which is what I say in the talk. But it was maybe 2 years ago that, how you have all these separate pieces in your mind. I'm a boomer too, but it was maybe 2 years ago. I think I started thinking about it maybe around George Floyd. And just little pieces of it were floating around. And then one day it just came together for me because I do talk about equity and racism and things like that, but I'd never put anything together quite like I did in that TEDx talk. And I had some great help, some coaches, but I did write it and they just helped me make it better and help with the delivery. And I think we've all got a story in us. We've all got a talk in us, putting together different experiences. Even between the 2 of you, you could share some of the things that have happened to you and how they impacted you. And that's all the talks are, is just a big idea of how we can make things better. And you guys are doing that all the time.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah, we're trying. When we both started this, we didn't think anybody would listen. We were hoping maybe like
Here we are.
Yeah, we thought we'd be like 3 shows in, 100 downloads. But, we learned something in like with every single one of our guests. I personally have more self-help books now and journals than I've ever had in my entire life. Mm-hmm. But I use them. These are tools that I use. And I got, 3 years ago, if you'd asked us if this was going to happen, no. But I'm happy where we're at. And we get to talk to really great guests like you. And, I when we were talking, I don't know, months ago, you just shared your story and you were so passionate about, just like the mental health aspect of all this, right? Because,
right.
Part of taking care of our self-care and self-love is also going to the dentist. So not a big secret to some of our listeners, but to maybe you guys, I'm terrified of the dentist. And it wasn't something that was generational. It was something that happened to me later in life. And since then, I deathly afraid. So when I broke my nose in New York City, I had also ended up cracking 2 teeth. So they had to go and take those teeth out. My blood pressure just totally sank. I was so nervous. Mm-hmm. But then when I was coming home, I just started to try and do some breathing exercises just to relax myself because I was so overwhelmed by the experience. But I know that if I'd had a dentist like you, I would have been way more comfortable because bedside manner is everything, right?
Yes, absolutely.
If you're going to be a dick to me, you're just going to make the worst experience of my life 10 times worse. But I think the demeanor and maybe like in dentistry or any medical field, if we talked a little bit more about the mental health aspect of this, because for me, it's a terrifying experience. Mm-hmm. But, maybe like when you have to have like a mental health, like a tooth removed or something, maybe give patients like an idea of things they can do to kind of calm themselves down before that happens, like some breathing exercises or things like that. Is that something that you guys do in your practice or you've done in the past?
Yeah, I'm in insurance now and benefits administration, but there are some providers who do acupuncture and things like that to help with biofeedback for really terrified patients. Usually they opt for sedation. Nitrous is a very safe form of conscious sedation that reverses pretty quickly. Some people, depending on if they're getting a whole lot of work, they go general anesthesia, but we want to avoid that if it's not absolutely necessary because there's always a risk, when you have anesthesia and when you have surgery. But I'm going to say the biggest thing to avoid having that as an adult, and I have different experiences with dentists because I'm 61 and I remember being in the dental chair and smoke coming out of my mouth and all of these noises and stuff. So it wasn't the most amazing experience for me. But the good thing my parents did is that they took me early. That's where we're messing up with a lot of the kids. Because if I see you at 6, 7, 8, 10, 20, and you've got a mouthful of cavities, you've got infection, you've got gum disease, it's going to be uncomfortable to straighten that out. Now, getting you through that process and doing the best we can to alleviate the discomfort with a good, education and bedside manner helps with the attitude and the mindset. But once you've had a bad experience, it's really hard for us to overcome it. But it's so often, what I saw so often was parents or the individual just waited too late. When they had that sensitivity to sugar, they didn't come in. When they had the sensitivity to cold, they didn't come in. When it was cold and hot, they didn't come in. And then invariably on the 4th of July or Christmas or whatever we can count on, that's when that face is going to blow up or a piece comes off. And then they're, blowing up our phones. And it's really prevention. What, I also talk about a lot is the more afraid you are is counterintuitive, but the more you need to be in, the more you need to go so that things are caught really early and solved really simply. Waiting is the worst thing in the world, but if you don't want to go, you just I'm not going to go until I just have to. But that is exactly the opposite for anything, really, for medical problems for your car, the yellow light means something. We're not going to wait till the car breaks down. But we don't do that with our oral health, and it affects our entire bodies. People have literally died from a bad toothache because they let it go too long.
For my son, I remember his very first dentist appointment. I don't remember how old he was. He was pretty young. It was basically kind of when he started getting teeth. I feel his pediatrician's like, hey, you should go for the first checkup. And I remember still to this day, his very first visit, he was sitting on my lap because he wasn't comfortable to be in the chair alone. And I just remember, I got to get my emotions together. I want him to have fun in this experience. We even sought out a dentist that had a service animal for like first visits. Like I was like, I've got to try to make this as happy for him as it could be. And he still was having this anxiety because it's new and it's different. There's these machines and So I remember my husband and I having a conversation, and I was like, well, maybe if he goes and sees us at the dentist, it'll be fine. And that was when it clicked. He had the same dentist. They let us lay in the chair. They were like doing the checkup on us, and he could watch. And then, now it's your turn. And then the service animal came, and I just remember thinking like, okay, we're good now. And now we're in Georgia. He has his dentist. He walks in there like he owns the place. He don't care. And he'll lay down and do whatever they ask.
And that's the greatest thing for us to see as well. A little less apprehension each time. Keeping those visits, positive reinforcement. You're doing a great job. No cavities. So,
yeah. And I think it goes back to that thought of like trying to make sure that, you yourself are taken care of and you're in check and you're not relaying that down to the next generation and passing that fear on.
Right. This is terrible, but my nose is really running. Give me 1 second. You guys.
Yeah. No, you're fine.
No worries.
These are bad. Right back.
I like this backdrop. I want this wall.
You need to get your husband to fix it.
Okay.
Which one?
Your husband needs to fix your wall in your
the
office
basement.
Downstairs. Yes, because I don't like the bear. You need to go.
That's his space, though. You can do whatever you want on there.
Whatever. We put up a wall.
We're admiring your backdrop.
you just put in a movable wall, so you move in the wood frame, and then you can move it back out. And you could do that in a workday.
This is
no way.
Depending on what I want my background to look like. Yeah,
nice.
But it really has a nice rich color. I got it on Amazon. It's on a little frame. I've got a Christmas.
Nice.
I want something like
G-Rex. I know.
Behind you. I like that's dope.
I know. We need to share that background.
Well, you have it. I'll send it to you next. I'll send it before your next interview. Oh my God, what am I going to do with you? But so it's funny that we're talking about this, because I do need to go back to the dentist, right? So I've been doing a little bit of research for myself, on how to get myself in the number one, the right frame of mind to call the dentist, right? I still got to do that. And then finding somebody that I'm going to be comfortable with. But I'm also practicing some breathing exercises, a little bit of meditation. The problem that I have is I have a little bit of adult onset ADHD. And so trying to meditate or do any mindfulness is truly like an inside battle in my head. But I realize as I get a little bit later in life that I need to get past this so that I can get things done. It's just a horribly terrifying experience for me. And, people may laugh that oh, you're afraid of the dentist. There were other circumstances that went into that. And I'm like, I need to get past this shit. I need to go to a dentist.
Have you never been other than for emergencies? Is that what you're saying?
So my mouth is really small. And so every time I would get a sinus infection, I'd end up having to have a root canal and have my tooth removed. So I only have 6 teeth left on my top. So I have had many a trip to the dentist, and none of them been pleasant. Well, except for the one where they put me out, and that was freaking amazing.
Well, that's what I was saying. The sedation, push come to shove, and you may have to pay for it yourself. But if it's, if you're able and it's going to keep you from being traumatized yet again, then that's what we recommend. A lot of times insurance won't cover it, but I mean, you pick your pain. Baby. You pick your pain, the financial pain or the emotional pain. But whenever we make big decisions, there's going to be a pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So true.
I have a random question.
Random. Hit me.
Random.
About teeth, I hope. Let's get up.
No, we're moving past the teeth conversation, hopefully. Looking back on your journey, meaning, where you started to where you are today, what has been the hardest lesson that you have learned?
Wow. So many things going through my mind. There have been a lot of hard lessons, but the big one for me at this point, where I'm relentlessly pursuing personal growth, is I'm going to have to say two. One is to have difficult conversations as soon as possible after whatever occurs. Because historically, I would either scream or get real quiet, emotionally withdraw. And that really hurts relationships either way and makes it very difficult to repair them if you ever do. So I wish I'd learned that earlier. And it is still a work in progress because dealing with other adults, God. Kids, you give them a cookie, wash their tears, and it's over. But with adults, it's 6 years later. Remember that time? Oh, okay. But clearly you do. So let's talk about it again. So that is one of them, just communication, whether it's for anger management or how we're going to delegate work or whatever, just to go ahead and have those conversations. And I always admired those people. We all had that friend when we were younger that was like, guys, come on, let's talk about it. And they're dragging you together. And, some people just have a gift for mediation, and it doesn't bother them that people are mad or that feelings are hurt. They just, let's talk about it. Let's get through it. And I just think that's awesome. I am getting there. And I am so much better. And like you guys listening to the podcast, I have so many life coaches and therapists and so forth on that. That's been a big help. And then understanding why I would get mad about things and withdraw, understanding that it had to do with things that happened a long time ago. It wasn't even this person. So I needed to change, my perception and my mindset about that so that I could be mindful that in this moment, this person has nothing to do with what happened to me with the other person or with that other situation. And the other is I'm a giver. It sounds like you guys are as well, but to make myself a priority, put myself on my calendar, say no, and don't feel like I have to explain it and don't feel bad about it. If often no is the right answer. And if I don't say no to people and things that don't serve me, ultimately they don't serve them either, because I don't know why I'm whistling the first day of the new year. But, ultimately, if I'm not going to do a good job, or I'm going to be resentful about it, that's hurting me and it's not helping them. And I'm usually like that because they've taken me away from something that was a priority for me. So now my behavior is not equivalent to my values and my goals. It's not aligned. So I am learning to say no based on my goals in life and not based on how loudly you ask me or how you're crying or how you're blackmailing me with something that's
emotional blackmail.
Emotional blackmail, but my no is no. And however you want to process that, you do that. But that has just freed me for my time, for my self-care, for me to work on my own projects. And it's not, I give a lot, but it was too much. I was giving out and then being resentful because acting like somebody made me do something and they didn't.
That's huge right there. I get so frustrated with myself sometimes when I find that it's more oftentimes than not that I will take time for myself when I'm not feeling well, like I am sick or I have to go to the doctor, or like it's some big thing that's pushed me to take care of myself versus the everyday dedication to making sure that you're on your right path. So that resonates very much with me, hearing you say those things. And as I was listening to you talk before you even touched on it, I was, again, reflecting on myself. I know that if I keep my thoughts and my feelings inside and I don't approach the person or whatever and discuss it, be that mediator, that I will develop resentment. And one thing I know about myself through therapy is once I develop resentment, it's real hard to get out of there. It's really hard to get back into a healthy spot.
Right. Right.
Yeah. It's dangerous,
it really is. And a lot of times I would do that, and the other person, they didn't know what I was mad. They didn't know I was mad, didn't know what I was mad about. So it was, people can't read your mind either. So that's fruitless. What is the point of all of that when they're going on with their lives while you're sitting up journaling about what a terrible person they are? They're out tubing down the river,
living their best life.
Yeah, life be lifing.
Yeah.
Man, you answered you answered the questions I was going to ask. So I was going to ask, what you do for self-love and self-care, and you already answered that. So, man, you stole my thunder. I need to come up with a new question now.
More water, better nutrition. Yeah, my nutritionist has me putting this green stuff in my water. It is awful. I think she's mowing her grass and chomping this stuff up, putting it in a bag. It's so
She's marketing it. Daily greens.
Grass.
Yeah.
Yeah, and exercising, and I love to read. That's the other thing, is that I had given up some of my passions because I really do have multiple. I have a main job and multiple side jobs, but I'm just putting myself on my calendar. We're going to do a little art today. We're going to read here, little things that in the past I wouldn't have put on my calendar, but something else will take up that space if I don't put me there. Yeah. And I shouldn't get the remains of my day. I'm more important than that. So
true.
That's
what
you
need to write that nugget down, Dirty Skittles.
I don't know if everybody thinks that way or it has that voice in the back of their mind telling them that. Mm-hmm. But I know that it's putting that into action, right? Like dedicating myself to myself. Like I'm going to do this for me and not wait till, some medical emergency to put myself first then, Yeah.
So one day you're going to get a bunch. One day you're going to get a bunch of calendar invites for me. It'll be, I need to read. I need to go outside.
It won't work. I'll ignore them. They go straight to junk. I got to do it for myself. Okay. Another one of my favorite questions to ask, just because I'm a curious person. If you could go back from where you are today to an earlier version of yourself and give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say? And how old are you when you go back in time?
I would be in my 20s, I'm sure. And that's a good question. Gosh, there's so many places where I wish I'd gone right instead of left or vice versa. But I think it would be in college, I would tell myself to pursue writing. I love being in healthcare and I'm really good at it, even what I do now with insurance, because I try to bring not just the company's perspective, but because I practice so long, I also have the provider's perspective. And some things aren't so black and white, for standing operating procedures don't work for healthcare. But I really, and I've written 8 books, hundreds of articles. I wrote for a major newspaper, but I have wondered if I just pursued writing or, fine arts or journalism or, what would have happened with my career, because that is quite my favorite thing is writing. I've even written, lots of dental articles and research and journals, but didn't have the time, obviously, I would have had because I wasn't doing it full time.
Yeah.
And that I feel like that would have put me in a position to be doing something I'm naturally good at. Dentistry, healthcare, I don't think anybody's naturally good at it. I made myself good at it. But to have followed that, and I see people who just knew from a little kid what they wanted to do. And you hear them in their interviews. I always wanted to do this. I can see Mariah Carey with a comb or a toothbrush or whatever little divas use. And Beyonce, those guys just know it. Bishop Tutu probably knew that he was supposed to be a man of God. But I think I was supposed to be a full-time writer, and that would have changed a lot of things. I don't want to say anything about people because I don't regret any of those choices. Even the relationships that ended badly had so many good parts to them, or I never would have been in them. But the career thing, I just wonder about sometimes. And I just got an award, a living legend in science and technology.
Wow.
I had a big event over for it. That's what I said. And when I was under 40, I got a ton of awards. They have so many awards for you guys under 40, outstanding this and that under 40. So I got a ton of those. But I tell you what, you get between 40 and 60, they're like, well, you should be doing well. You giving you an award?
Yeah.
You had 50 years to get it right. Seriously? You think you should get a pat on the back for that? However, apparently once you reach your 60s, if you're still going strong, you become a legend and you start getting awards again. My grandson was like, what is the award for? I said, I think for being alive.
I love that. I love that. That's funny. Congrats on figuring it out early. You get an award. You figured it out. Good job. Nothing for you. You're still alive. Congrats.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah.
There you go. Legend.
High five.
High five. I told my family I would no longer be Mo or Mimo anymore, which is my grandma name. But I tried to do it in my Bridgerton voice. Gentle readers, forward and for all time, I shall be referred to as #legend.
Yes. Yes, that's so good. So good. Netflix, where you at?
Let it be written, so let it be done.
Yes. That is wonderful. That is wonderful. I love that. I love that.
Oh, this is such a great conversation. You're just so amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and entertaining us with our random dentist questions. Seems like G-Rex needs to get more on preventative care is what we've learned. Not the emergency care. We got it. No, but seriously, I think this is like food for the soul, just to talk to somebody who's as successful as you are and where you are in your life and hearing those things that I think G-Rex and I can still relate to on like prioritizing ourselves and making what we love a priority and not just an afterthought.
I'm going to put myself on my calendar. Is what I'm going to do.
Go for it, man.
By my time, because I'm like Dr. Mo. Like if I don't put it on my calendar, it doesn't get done.
All right.
Somebody else takes that time. But the other thing I wanted to know is how can people find you? Like if they're interested in your TEDx talks or your podcast, how do they find you?
I'm on all the socials and it's at Dr. Mo Anderson, DRMOE. Put the E in there because there's another Dr. Mo that's MO, drmoanderson.com or on the socials at Dr. Mo Anderson, TikTok, Instagram, X, Twitter, whatever we're calling it now. And of course, for my professional stuff, did I say Instagram and whatever else they put me on? So, but the easiest way is just to go to my website and you'll see links to the TEDx talk, what dentistry teaches us about curbing racism. And it's really about unconscious bias, xenophobia, sexism, racism, all of those biases that are hindering us. So, and I'm a speaker coach as well, if I can throw that out. So if people got a pitch presentation or they're getting ready to make a TEDx talk or TED talk, I can work with them and help them. I really love doing that as well. You guys have been great and congratulations on the success of your podcast. I mean, I swear I steal stuff from all the time. I look at your newsletter and all of that. And
it's all good.
Amazing. And it's hard. People have no idea how hard this is. They, the show notes and the graphics and the newsletter and the editing, the audio engineering. It's so much. I'm telling y'all, these ladies are amazing, what they do and how well they do it. And your audience, I know they just love you as much as I do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Oh,
I appreciate it.
What a great call. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. And go have fun with your grandbabies. I'm so excited.
Play.
I am. We're going to have a good time today.
Yay.
Thanks for having me.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Have a good rest of your weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, all. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'm G-Rex.
And I'm Dirty Skittles.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. We'd love to listen to your feedback.
We can't do this without you guys.
It's okay to be not okay. Just make sure you're talking to someone.